topic today is going to be how will Gen AI affect the human condition? So, is automated creativity good for humans? And with that, I'm going to do a round of introductions. My name is Karthik Swami. I'm a senior data scientist, also electrical engineer. Jason,
Hi, I'm Jason Miller. I'm a data science consultant and small business owner. Hmm.
Joe.
I'm Joseph McGarry, former transit specialist and transit entrepreneur.
Hmm. And I'm Stephen Hicks. I'm a professor of philosophy.
Hey, thank you. We have a great panel here, so we will get started quickly. Um, okay, so I usually like to do this because it provides a fundamental overview of ideas. Uh, so Gen AI is basically what we say generative AI is a shiny new object. So everybody's talking about it. People think that there's a lot of prospect here. Companies are investing, millions of dollars, billions of dollars. But AI is currently very good at learning singular tasks. So there's no like generalized AI that can learn everything, which if we had that, I think we'd be in trouble. So key concept here is automation of tasks, right? AI will automate everything. Now AI is automating creativity where you just say, give me a picture of, trees with sand and a beach, and it will just generate it based on training data. So Gen AI, the attempts to generate new output based on training data. So this could be visual, images, video. Video is coming up, but it's going to get better and better. Language mimicking, which we call LLMs or large language models. So this is your ChatGPT. For entertainment, AI can actually write songs. It's not really good in a lot of these things, but it's coming up, right? It can write songs, it can write audio, it can mimic your voice, right? A lot of times right now we have voice mimicking where it'll just take a sample of your voice and then it will memorize it, do whatever it needs to, and then you just fill whatever script and it'll seem like you're reading it, right? Hollywood films, if you know about the Hollywood strike, part of that was based on this is that too much AI is being used and they're saying, they're putting us out of work, right? So in pop culture, of course, we have deep fakes. So key issue with Gen AI is that, a large carbon footprint to train a model, it can take, so many, megawatts of power. Unauthorized use of training data, which we'll kind of hit on today, is that it's basically scraping the internet for data. And some of it might be unauthorized. So in hallucinations, we say hallucinations when it just spews nonsense. It doesn't know what to do, so it will just spew whatever it thinks is appropriate because it's really just a kind of a statistical model in the background. Regurgitation of training data, meaning that it's just sort of memorized the training data and then it's just giving that back to you. People think that it's generating it. Generally, Gen AI response is a combination of some generation, which means some of it, it's sort of doing it on its own, a lot of paraphrasing and then plagiarism. In this country, paraphrasing is plagiarism. That's what I was taught in high school. So, the really very little distinction there. By that, we just mean it's just regurgitating the data. So that's why, like songwriters are suing, these AI song makers saying, well, you trained it in the top 40 for the last 40 years. So is that, we want royalties and so forth. So the first question is that should human creativity be automated? And then we have some other prompts here for you if for you to start thinking about it. What are the pros and cons? Should we try to maintain some aspect of the human and shield him or her from AI? How far do we take this? If fundamental aspects of humanism is essentially wiped out, what impact might it have? So my response here would be, uh, I mean, I think obviously the answer is no, right? I don't think human creativity should be automated. I mean, to what level do we take it? I mean, we're not really listening to any philosophers or anything like that. We're doing it for the profit, right? We're basically just doing the same. How much money can we make? So I don't have a clear answer for this, but I would just say, should it be automated? Probably not, because we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, And then, in that process, we're actually, taking jobs away from creative people, just like the Hollywood example, I shared with you. So with that, I'll open up to Jason.
Sorry to put myself on mute. Thank you for that introduction to the topic, Karthik. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're mentioning. As before, just to keep things interesting, I'll kind of play the pro AI side of the fence, even though I certainly appreciate those concerns. So I guess we could make comments about the great value that we're getting out of image generation and other forms of creative AI generation. For web developers, let's say, it's very convenient to be able to create new images, which hopefully don't violate any copyrights by generating them, and empowers a lot of people to be able to go out and build things that they otherwise might not be able to build. It also gives us inspiration. So maybe by generating images and seeing what the machine can do, it can inspire some ideas, and then I can go create my own version of something that I generated. So those are some arguments you can make for the benefits of it. I'll just stop there and see what Joe has to say about it, I guess.
Well, thank you, Jason. I agree with you uh, wholeheartedly. I think AI will assist many people in coming up with new ideas and enhancements to their creativity. I think you're not going to be able to keep it from human creativity. It'll be there from now on, since it's another tool in our arsenal of creativity. And I think we will use it to inspire us to make new additions to what we already have in our thoughts and in our minds, especially with the creative side, where you've got artists of all kinds, uh, painters, photographers, writers, entertainers, and so on. I think it'll definitely be part of human creativity from now on.
Hmm.
Stephen.
Okay, on this, I would say I'm on the optimist side, and with respect to automation of the various elements of creativity, I think the more the better, and the sooner the better. I'm not worried at all about the wiped out language that is put in the slide here. I think for those of us who want to be creative, the fact that there are algorithms and machines that can do all sorts of things more or less automatically is not going to change the imperative for me if I want to be creative to still be creative. Just in the same sense that if I want to take photographs of nature that I have taken, the fact that there are all kinds of more automated ways of taking photographs of nature and duplicating them and so forth, that's not going to change anything for me. If music programs and music algorithms can come up with catchy tunes and harmonies and so forth, that's fine, and there may be a market for that. But if I am still a person who enjoys creating new music and I want to create music that I have created, that's not going to change, no matter what the algorithms are that are out there. I think one of the great benefits of automating lots of creativity will be just the fact that there's right now not enough art in the world, and there hasn't been for much of human history because it's been so expensive to create art, and so all of the increased duplications that are possible. It means that more people will have access to more art at lower cost, and in some cases at higher quality. So from the consumer side, I think it's going to be a boom. The same thing I think here is by analogy to, or what's going on, so to speak, in digital and video is analogous to what we went through with respect to text and writing when we made the transition from everything having to be hand copied and handwritten to the printing press, and then attaching machines to the printing presses so that we mass produce books and so forth. And that is just a great boon to literacy, to the amount of stuff that's available. There is, of course, some fear about, we put scribes out of work, and people who used to have to sharpen quills for us and hand pound all of the pigments to make the ink. So yes, as there are going to be some job losses, but I think if we look at what has happened in the text publishing industry, it's only been growth over the course of the last century. So I think by analogy, the same thing will happen when we automate processes in video and digital imagery as well. There are copyright issues. I think that just means we need to up our game when it comes to intellectual property, get the lawyers involved. This is a hot new area. It's been evolving quickly over over the course of the last 2 or 3 centuries. So there will be new issues and challenges there, but I think it's just a new application of the same sorts of things that we've been solving successfully for the last few centuries.
Okay, great. I think that analogy that you gave with the printing, that was great. Okay.
Thanks.
That is a great answer. So some of this we're going to touch on as we move along. Some of these questions that we've sort of answered already. So is Gen AI ethical since it uses internet training data? So what I'm saying here is that anything you put on the internet becomes training data to train future AI models. This includes visuals, audio, and text. For example, the transcript of this think tank will be used to train future AI models without our permission because they're basically scraping the internet. In this sense, AI becomes collectively knowledgeable of everything. So this right here, kind of like what Stephen was saying, is that uh, this is what everybody's saying about the copyright, saying that, well, if I put some art out there, you can't just, scrape it and then use it for your own training data, and then you come up with a product using my training data. So my response here would be, this is uncharted territory, like we talked about. We really don't know what's going to happen. There's whole lot of lawsuits against ChatGPT because they're going in and mining Reddit, right? They're using Reddit to train, and you wonder how does ChatGPT come up with very thoughtful answers? It knows everything. It's essentially sort of cache the internet, right? It's computer people will understand what caching is. So they've cached the internet so that it's kind of like flattened and stored so that it can just reference it. So I would think there's some ethical issue here because you put something out there, in the internet, and then without your permission, it's being taken. And then, like I said, also hit song, writers and big production companies, they're all kind of suing. I don't know what's going to happen here, but I think there might be a slight ethical issue. Maybe they need to reformulate the laws. I don't know. Web scraping has been going around for a long time, since the beginning of the internet, to where people can basically go on the website and take that data. So AI people are saying, well, that's what we're doing, right? That's all we're doing. And they're trying to say that this has existed, but should you use that to train your model and then make a viable product of it where you're going to make money? That's the thing. I think this is I'm on the fence on this because it could be it's IP, right? Intellectual property, but then maybe we just haven't given enough thought as a humanity. So I'll open that up to Jason.
Yeah, you raised really great points, and I think that the question is not so much is Gen AI overall ethical or unethical, but rather the specific Gen AI models came up with by OpenAI and other early companies. So certainly, this is something we want to exist, and we're getting a lot of value out of it, but they're one of many organizations over the past 20, 30 years, which has taken this idea of let's race ahead by cutting corners and maybe, violating some IP rights or other rights and produce something that's unquestionably of high value, but in a questionable way. And so I don't think that it's necessary. I understand why they did it and were very aggressive in the content that they fed into their training data sets and their models. But I think that they could have restricted themselves to things that are a little bit more clear cut, like Wikipedia, Project Gutenberg, people chatting in open chat forums on the internet, things where you don't have such serious IP concerns as, let's say, copyrighted material, lyrics to songs, etc. So I would have preferred to see the training data created that way, starting with open source, clearly open source, and then saying, hey, look at this really cool chat model. We've built it. Who would like to volunteer their proprietary materials, art, books, songs for the next round of training? And the whole world rushes forward to sign up, and there's some clear rights, what will and will not be done with our data, how it will be used. That would have been a much better approach, I think. But overall, I do think it is worth having, even if we all need to give up a little bit of our IP to make it happen.
Joe?
Yeah, I don't think you can I don't think you can really stop AI from sort of infringing on other people's ideas. Obviously, like you said, it was going to scrape the internet and consume everything out there in a matter of seconds. And of course, as time goes on, AI will be as as good as anything we can produce. But like you say, it's only there to enhance us. We're still in control of everything. And I think these AI models that we discuss are going to be infringing on some copyrights and such. And there will be a lot of discussion going on in the use of AI for that reason. And I think, like anything, it's like sampling music that they do now and such, and people stealing, uh, you know, lines from books and texts and so on. They use it to create their own ideas. So I think it'll enhance the whole AI experience for people by just broadening our horizons. And I think it will be something to consider as far as copyrights and so on in the future. But if it's
Mhm.
used properly, I think people will be able to do it and work with it.
Mhm.
I do. Thank you.
Stephen.
Yeah, I like everything said so far in response to this. My overall reaction is to say that this is still very early days in the internet, and certainly it's even more early days with respect to AI scraping and all the use that's going to be put here for it. I think also we need to think of the responsibility as going both ways. So if we say, for example, that I am participating in the internet, I'm going on Facebook or Twitter, or I'm putting my course syllabi online and so forth. In part, it is up to me to make clear the status of that information that I'm putting up there. For the most part, we're putting the information up there and we know we're putting it, so to speak, into a commons, and all sorts of other people will have access to it and be able to do whatever they want with that. And if we are not fine with that, then I think the first line of responsibility is for us to either not put that information out there, or to put that out there with an explicit copyright declaration, or to put it out there not necessarily on the intranet, but in some sort of an intranet where there are information sharing safeguards in place. So the other side of that, of course, is the people who are scraping all of the data. They do have the responsibility to pay attention to people's explicit declarations where possible. Now, at the same time, this is all happening very fast and it's very messy. And this is the way it always is historically with any new technology. And the way we always work it out is by having lots and lots of discussions, but we do also have lots of lawsuits. So the fact that there are lots of lawsuits going on all over the place, I think that is normal and par for the course, because ahead of time we can't predict where various sorts of lines are going to be drawn. And so part of what we want is for an up-to-speed legal profession that's kind of immersed in the long history of the common law and property right law to take into account this new technology, and where there are contested boundaries about the use of information to sort it out, so we have the new precedent. So right now, I don't think there is a good answer. If you go outside walking down the street, is it legitimate for other people to be using their cameras and taking pictures of you and then posting them on their Snapchat? Or if you're part of a crowd scene, I think all of that needs to be worked out. If the police have various surveillance cameras, and you're walking down the street, who has the right to your facial image as it appears in some database or other? Or Google Maps, to take another example, they're sending the automated vehicles all around, perpetually trying to update the accuracy of their maps, and they take pictures of your house, and sometimes you appear in various pictures and so forth. All of that I think is to be worked out, and I think we will work it out just as we've worked out information sharing and information privacy in other areas. My other big thought just is that is to say that right now we basically have one internet, and I think partly we're in the early days. I can see if people talk about this, that why we shouldn't have two, three, or four different internets along with all sorts of intranets as we develop into the next generations of this technology. And there will be different protocols and information sharing rules in place for each of those different internets, and people can participate in each as they so choose.
Okay, that is great. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So I know, Jason, you're going to love this question. You kind of partially answered this. So is there an argument for using Gen AI? I know we already sort of answered it, but within the context of this question, so what might potential good use cases be? Could it actually help some people out who are in creative rut, who might benefit from Gen AI? I think my answer here is that just like everybody said, it could be useful, especially for people that may not have the funds to hire a graphic designer, right? For example, right? To hire somebody and then to pay them. Now they can just go on, to this tool and then just, within a couple of clicks, they can generate what they need. But my experience has been in that since this technology is very, still in its primacy, uh, we can't get exactly what we need. You have to sit there and prompt it many, many times before something that's satisfactory comes back to you. So as the technology ramps up, I think that there might be better use cases for this. I can see how, like, if somebody wanted to just put together a presentation real quick. I should have mentioned that all the artwork in this presentation is basically Gen AI related. So you see where this is going, where I was able to generate this with 2 clicks by just saying robot, AI takeover, and then it spits this image out that you see back there. So and that's the thing. It's like, where's it getting it from? It's getting it from the training data. So I think that it can be useful. It might be a creative tool. Uh, it can be a creative tool for children, I think. It might spark their imagination. So I can see its use cases, Jason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there are lots and lots of use cases for the current state of generative AI, visual, audio, and other forms. Although there'll be many, many, many more use cases as it gets significantly better. And if we're not in the early days of the internet, which perhaps we are, we're definitely in the early days of this. And the image that you have there looks great. But if you were to ask it to put a few different human beings in the same image, it starts to overload its memory a little bit as it's generating it, and some of those humans will end up with fingers that are webbed together, or perhaps 2 or 3 or 4 extra arms, things like this. So this is certainly in its infancy, and will open up additional use cases as time goes by. Perhaps, for instance, we could use generative visual AI for police sketches. You got robbed by somebody. Can you describe them? Well, we don't have a million super expert artists to go try to caricature what we think the person may have looked like based on your description, but you could work with generative AI. Perhaps you need somebody to talk to your kid, or to come up with a creative story for them, or to help them create an image based on something they've imagined, or something they have in their head that they can't quite express well enough and don't have the skill to actually create. So there's lots of great use cases for it now, and certainly we'll have more. But I think it is worth thinking about maybe where it's not as useful, and can we identify areas where maybe human beings will begin to specialize, or where we need advances in the technology. But yeah, that's all I have to add.
All right, some of the ideas I had about this was that I think we'll see the argument for use of general AI or Gen AI is going to enhance creativity with a lot of people. Also, it might help us in efficiency issues, making things a little bit more automated when we have to develop our projects and things and ideas, and any kind of projects we might be working on as artists. Also, the idea of analysis, data analysis, could be very much enhanced through the use of AI. And also, it might be helpful for people who have accessibility issues, maybe in language and in translations and such, and for many other reasons. I think there's a lot of uses for AI which I probably couldn't imagine now because it's not in full swing. It's just in its infancy. But I think overall there might be a lot of efficiencies that could be accentuated for business and for artists and for just the general public in processing data or making ideas and developing thoughts and concepts. So I think there's a great use for AI in the future. And I think we'll slowly develop boundaries and such that'll keep us working together as opposed to working against one another using AI, which might be the case when you infringe on other people's copyrights and so on. I think it will be helpful in the future. I really do.
Stephen?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. Clearly, there are cost issues, and right now, large-scale AI is very expensive in terms of energy consumption, but that will improve. All technologies improve and lower their cost dramatically over time. As they do so, I think the amount of creativity will be democratized, so to speak. So more accessible to children, more accessible to people in poorer countries who otherwise would not have access to all sorts of creative tools. I think there's another point I would add, and that is about psychological style of people who are creative. Some people are lone wolves, so to speak. They're inside their own head and they come up with an idea and they write it down. But for a number of people, there's a long history of this in all of the creative fields. The process is more social and dialogic. So people, if you think of the classic example of songwriting duos, where someone says, well, what if we tried this, and tries to riff on the piano, and then the other person, has a violin or whatever, and said, well, I could add this, and then, well, what about this back and forth? And so the prompting that goes back and forth in that conversation is how those particular individuals are able to be more creative. So if we think of a lot of the new AI programs where they are, you put a prompt out there and you get some feedback and that prompts some more ideas and questions and so on from you. People for whom that psychological style is their way of doing creativity will certainly be benefited by these new tools. And then the additional point is this was touched on, I think, by Joe, that just the number of experiments that can be done simultaneously. So just as a research scientist doesn't need to have 1,000 lab assistants each investigating a different protein. You can have 1,000 versions of the protein being investigated by the AI. The creative thinking lawyer doesn't need to have 50 paralegals researching the precedents. The AI can do all of that for him or her. The same thing will happen for the artist. They can try out any number of different color tones and composition things and variations on harmony simultaneously, and then select from those the ones that they think are better. So all of the experimentalism will be running in parallel rather than serially the way it has been in the past. And that's going to be a gain for everyone.
Okay, that's great. One thing that I would like to add, I forgot to say this, is that there's actually a community now to where, they post what they created using Gen AI, right? So that's something like we talked about. That's something that might be, like Stephen was saying, it's a new kind of paradigm to where people can now share here's the AI art that I created. And that is another form of creativity, I guess. And then now they can post that and then say, oh, wait, that's pretty cool. You created that. Look what I created. It's sort of like that to where, I don't know. I think that's a developing community. So that is interesting that it's taking off in that route. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that it's like people are posting what they've done with the AI. And then, that's a new community. Okay. So should humans learn to coexist with Gen AI? Remember when we were talking about generative AI, right? We're not talking about like It's a kind of a subset of all of the other AI. So generative AI, it's basically it's generating conversations, generating art, this kind of stuff, which some people feel that, okay, wait, that infringes on my humanity. That infringes on my, things that I can do, right? So that's the question here is that much like the internet, once the technology such as Gen AI has been unleashed on humanity, it is generally not going to disappear. So how can humans learn to coexist with AI and maybe in a symbiotic relationship? Or do you think it's going to be like adapt or die to where, for example, like with the internet to where you're either on board or you're not. So that's the question here. I think it's that kind of situation to where this is a game-changing technology that comes in. Now all of a sudden you may not need to hire a graphic artist. There's two possibilities here. One is greedy company is going to say, well, I don't want to pay a graphic artist $90,000 anymore, right? I can just do this myself. Or do they hire the graphic artist and the graphic artist uses this tool to save time, right? So there's two things here. We don't know what it's going to, I'm hoping that it's going to be the latter to where artists will sort of use this to be more creative, right? Using something like generative AI, maybe, you can generate maybe 10 of these in 20 minutes rather than if you were to this art that you see here, if somebody were to sit here and draw it, it might take them days or maybe even weeks. So in that sense, I think that there's some kind of, coexistence that, we can, it's either uh, that it's just another tool that we could use, maybe, things like that, but it's definitely not going to go back in the bottle. So it's this disruptor technology that moving forward, it's that you either use this or you get phased out. So I think that those are my thoughts. Jason?
I fully agree with you. I don't actually have that much to add on this. You've heard me say before that I think of AI more like the child of human
Yeah.
beings, and it's a child we want to see grow up, mature, and surpass us. There is potential for the paperclip problem, so we certainly have to be careful, and that's the only situation in which I'd be concerned with an adapt or die scenario. Is just early on if the capabilities outstripe the wisdom and we don't properly contain and control the most advanced AIs before we've proven them out and understand them, yes, there are some dangers in that regard. But in terms of culture, in terms of art and creativity, I think that it's almost purely positive. There, and that might be a little bit overly optimistic. We've seen, AI violate people's IP before and spit out portions of books and things like that. But overall, I think it's very positive thus far. And to your point, the types of communities that you were describing include Midjourney is probably the largest one. I personally cannot even draw a little stick man, but I love to go onto Midjourney where you have tens of thousands of people at any moment throughout the day constantly generating images, doing it publicly in various chat rooms, and then you jump on an image generation thread. I kind of like what this guy is generating, but what if instead of being in the style of a classical artist, it's in the style of Andy Warhol? And so I'll try a variation on that and we'll all see what we think about it. That can be really fun. And hopefully I don't rip off too many of the artists whose work went into it, but I can certainly see why you'd be concerned. So yeah, I'm not sure I can really add too much on this, but I am curious to know what Joe thinks.
Oh, well, I agree with everything you just said. It's quite good. Some of my thoughts are that existing with Gen AI in the future will be play a dominant role in a lot of industries, the healthcare industry, medical industry, product development, and so on and so forth. I think, like you said, people are going to use it as a tool. They can generate their own ideas. They can develop their own ideas better. And like you said, it's going to enhance productivity. And I think people will learn to use it together and work together for new concepts, new ideas. I really do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh, just to add to that, I think the market is big, the world is very big, and I don't see this at all as a win-lose. I think this is only going to be a win-win scenario. that in all of the artistic media, there will be the mass-produced option. That was the first option Karthik laid out, but then there also will be the specialist who uses the tools in more sophisticated ways. So I think whether we're talking about visual arts or movies or static visual arts, paintings, and so on, there's always going to be those who want something mass produced, and they're perfectly fine with something mass produced. And there's a market for that. And those who want something that is more boutique, handmade, unique, individualized. And there's always going to be a big market for that. The same way the automating of food production didn't change the fact that some people want to be chefs and some people as consumers want the fine dining experience. But at the same time, that can coexist and be a huge market with another huge market that is fast food that is more or less automated on both the production and the consumption side. There can be Hollywood movies and a huge Hollywood industry. Sometimes that goes into the more formulaic form. That's very popular, but at the same time, there's a huge indie film, and that the indie film is done by directors with their own approaches and actors who want to do various different things as well. And they're explicitly resisting, they think, in many cases, the Hollywood direction. It's not an either or. The same thing with respect to clothes. We used to have to make all of our clothes by hand and everything very slowly. And now we're perfectly fine with having a mass market of mass-produced automated clothes, and many of us are fine with that. But at the same time, there's a large market for handmade, unique clothing items, and people want to customize and so on. So I don't think it's going to be any different for the other kinds of artistic media. It's a big market, and there will be market segmentation just as in all of the other markets.
Karthik, you're muted.
Thank you. So what I said, I'll repeat what I said. I said I actually wrote this question based on a lecture that I saw from Stephen about the human condition. So this is how will Gen AI impact the human condition? And I think what we're going for here is, will the human output diminish in language and art? And I think we've sort of answered this in different ways. And, we talked about how we demonstrated certain things have happened in history and, it's been for the better. But might there ever be a time when human creativity becomes useless because AI that was trained on many humans can now produce a better product than a singular human? So I would say, you know, I came into this conversation thinking one thing, and I think the good thing about this is that as you guys are talking, right, that's kind of what we want out of this is that your ideas go into my head. And then now it's like I'm thinking again, and then it's like I'm reformulating my own ideas based on what we've talked about here. So my answer here would be uh, talking about those communities that take off. Now, maybe that's the sort of thing to where, now the race is like, oh, everybody has art. Art has been sort of democratized to where not only one person has to create it in a room like this for 3 months, but now everybody can kind of play around with it, add their value to it. Now that opens up a new kind of, communication and chat room, rooms or, threads or, Reddit or all this kind of different stuff. So I would just say, I don't know. I mean, this is another one of these fence questions to where if, because, ChatGPT is generative in nature, right? So there's the notion that, well, if ChatGPT writes all your emails for you, then will you forget to write emails, right? Will that section of your brain sort of atrophy because you're no longer, using, your part of the brain? I mean, for example, I'll tell you, my son, he came up to me and then he said, I have to turn in this essay. And then he wrote the essay. And then he asked, one of these ChatGPT programs, because there's many of them out there now, to write an essay. And then he goes, well, why should I write it? Look, it wrote the essay also. So I read both of it. And then, my takeaway is that the human written essay that my son wrote was really more, it touched on the humanistic aspect of it. I could tell that, okay, wait, it was written by a human being, right? Versus the ChatGPT essay, it was just sort of, just like we talked about with different types of generative AI, it's just getting all these things from different places. And then, I can tell that it's kind of plagiarized. It reads as if it's like da 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 and this and that and da da da. You know what I mean? Very sort of robotic. So that's the thing here is that so human beings have language and they have art. So will this affect the creativity of humans? So I'm going to leave it at that. Uh, Jason?
Yeah, those are great questions, and I'm sure I don't know the answer. I do feel that AI is making gains in terms of creativity. Early on, folks were going to point to that and say, this is where human beings still have an advantage over the machine. This is something that the machine won't be able to do. And or, data scientists very early and other prompt engineers took that as a challenge and decided they wanted to show that AI can be creative. And even before that, some folks, folks who work very hard towards math and sciences from a young age, and then later in life are accused of being less creative, have wanted to sort of formulate what is creativity. Let's break this down. Let's analyze it and come up with a formula for it so that we can replicate it. And they have made some gains. And I think that, eventually, yes, it will be as creative as we are, but it won't necessarily be the same as we are. If you believe in the computational theory of mind, you would look at it as something that could replicate human experience. Philosophers like Searle, Putnam, and others would say, it lacks the experience, the what it's like aspect of consciousness to be able to understand the human experience, and therefore, even if it is more creative than us later on, it won't be the same as us, and therefore, as human beings, we can always offer our own perspective, perhaps that's different than what a machine might come up with, even being more intelligent, having more information, and potentially more creative than we are. So that is a little hope that we'll always have something to contribute. But yeah, I don't know where things are going. So I'll pass this off to Joe for sure.
Thank you. One thing that comes to mind as you speak is that this Gen AI is going to, like you say, try to emulate what man does, what people do, but can it really capture the genius of our own minds? I mean, technically, we'd like to think that this can replace our own mental capacities, and it will, in the fact that it can try to duplicate, kind of like a computer plays chess, and it knows all the moves, and it knows everything in there, but still the human, a good chess player can even often beat the computerized version because there's a creativity in the human mind that you don't have by trying to emulate the human mind. And so there's a lot of potential downside as well. I mean, in that there's a lot of ethical concerns, and then, like you say, people may lose their job because they're not being asked to write something or do something technical, or the manufacturing industry can use Gen AI to come up with new concepts and new ideas that they can market. But and so people can lose their jobs, and AI could try to emulate things, but there's still a potential in the human capacity that I don't think can replace the true geniuses of our time and of those in the future, in my opinion. But we all know that it's going to, it will do a lot of good things, and it will enhance us, but I don't think it may replace us completely because we are the creative minds that we are. So,
Yeah. Yeah, all of that is that's very very interesting. I think part of it is the issue of old skills being replaced, and will we need to develop new skills? So the fact that we don't know how to pluck a goose and sharpen or pluck a feather from the goose and sharpen it to grind our own ink anymore those skills have been lost to the vast majority of us. The fact that many people maybe don't even know how to write cursive anymore. Maybe we can let that go. Maybe even just, typing with all 10 of our fingers instead of just doing the typing thing like that. Maybe we can let all of that go. I don't think we have to worry about all of that very much, but that, of course, is on the physical side. Perhaps it's on the intellectual side that people are having more fears that we are smart, and we've always prided ourselves as human beings as being the smartest animals out there. So we're smarter than, dolphins and dogs and squirrels, right, and so forth. So maybe there's a bit of wounded pride if we think about other kinds of machines coming along that are smarter than we are in some respect. And I think that's a bit of a red herring, or that's not the right way to think about what is going to make your life meaningful. I don't think that being and living the best life as a human being has ever depended on being smarter than, say, other species. I mean, it's just so, for example, suppose dolphins or orangutans, which are already pretty smart, continue to evolve and in some measures of intelligence became more intelligent than human beings. Well, I think that would be very interesting. And it might change our dynamic with how we relate to dolphins and orangutans, but it's not going to change anything fundamental about what it is to be a human being. That I still need to think for myself and act in the world and create values and be the kind of person who can enjoy my values. So the same thing I think holds on the artificial side. It's not that dolphins or orangutans are evolving to, say, be more intelligent. Suppose machines are evolving to become more intelligent or more creative. The fact that calculators can do arithmetic faster than I can do arithmetic doesn't really change anything for me with respect to my needing to understand arithmetic and being able to do arithmetic. In fact, for the vast majority of human beings, there are always other people who can do arithmetic faster than they can do arithmetic. So the fact that there are machines that can do arithmetic faster doesn't change anything with respect to their own lives. So to take the example of Karthik's son writing the essay, so the son writes the essay, and then there's, say, ChatGPT writes an essay, and so forth. I think the more important issue is not from Karthik's perspective, can he tell the difference between which essay was written by his son and which was written by a machine? The important issue is inside his son's head. Has the son, in going through this exercise, learned the kinds of things that we want kids to learn when they're writing essays, how to read and digest and sort out important information from unimportant information and restructure things and exercise judgment and come to an opinion on his or her own point. No matter how good ChatGPT and other machines are at doing those sorts of things, it's not going to change the fact that those are all important things for Karthik's son to learn how to do. So we shouldn't see ourselves, I think, fundamentally as in competition with these machines, just as we don't think of ourselves as in competition with the dolphin intelligence or the orangutan intelligence, right? We're human beings. We need to be as skillful and as knowledgeable and have the right character and the right habits to do human things. And to the extent that machines enable us to do those things better, that's their value added.
Thank you. Thank you. Great answer. So we are going to wrap this up. So concluding thoughts, I would say, based on everything we've discussed, as far as generative AI, I think there's that, intellectual, IP issue to where it's like, am I infringing on somebody else's IP? Or, where do you draw the line? So we'll have to see how that turns out, but maybe let the lawyers, deal with that, see how these lawsuits turn out. Some of these lawsuits have actually already been, nullified because they can't really provide it, or people don't understand the technology, or, they don't understand the scientific aspect of it, that, oh, wait, this is really, you know, this new thing is made from parts from an old thing, right? It's kind of hard to prove. It's kind of hard to say, what is new and what is already existing. So I think in that sense, we just have to be careful with that. I would say the opportunity here is great. based on everything that we've said here, is that it could help children be more creative, maybe, and it's democratized art. As far as language with ChatGPT, I think it can be uh, kind of a replacement to Google in the sense that when you do, and this is what people were saying when ChatGPT first came out, is that, if you go to Google and you type something, and then what it'll do is it won't consolidate the information for you. Although now there has a little AI, a toolbar in there, but it won't consolidate it for you enough to where it'll just give you a bunch of websites and it's up to you to go in there and do it. ChatGPT, however, right, if you ask it a question, what it's done is, like we said, it's taken all this information and it'll just sort of consolidate it for you and give you the gist of it. So in that sense, maybe information retrieval, right? In our busy days, we need to make decisions. I don't want to read this 30-page document. Just tell me what it's about. We're in that kind of world. So generative AI might be helpful in that kind of sense, summarizing, as far as art, like I said, it could spark a new creativity where, people are using this art to create more content and then saying that, well, look what I created here. Look what, look how cool this is. So, and, to add to what Jason was saying was that that might be a new culture, right? That might be a new thing to where people are just sharing their art and then sharing it in different ways. So I think in that sense, it's good. Jason?
Absolutely. And this has been a very interesting discussion, although it's not the aspect of AI where I'm particularly expert. I would say that I'd probably summarized my position as being not to fear the AI, but also don't hesitate to go to your lawyer and sue the big AI company if they're stealing your IP. There are organizations out there like the Alliance for Decision Education and Best World, which are helping us to consider how AI summarization, as you mentioned, as a replacement for search engines, Google and Bing, might bias people, mislead them, or since the AI are designed to be easily steered and have become even more so since ChatGPT 3.5, it's possible that they could reinforce our own biases and lead to confirmation bias depending on how we phrase the questions. So we need to be really wary of that. But overall, I think AI is still something to be positive and optimistic about, but cautiously optimistic.
Joe?
I agree with those thoughts, Jason. I also think that it will help us to do a lot of problem solving in the future, make things more efficient in some jobs and some careers. I think it can help in the healthcare and medical industries. I think there's going to be a lot of creativity through the use of Gen AI in all these different areas. Education as well is going to need this and use it productively. So overall, I see a big future for this, and I'm anxious to see what it develops into, because we're still at the very beginning of the concept and the use of all this. So we'll see as time goes on. And I don't think it'll take too long for us to kind of shake it out and start developing rules and regulations regarding the use of AI and kind of work it into our society.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, good discussion. As I've been listening and thinking, one of the threads that pops out at me is whether we think of AI and its offshoots as a resource that we're going to use or as a new technology that's going to replace human beings and what human beings want to do in various senses. And I think the things that it's going to replace are things that we don't so much want to do anyways. So I think the resource side, at least in my thinking, is prevailing. So to think of non-AI or non-mechanical or non-machine examples, so as we think of someone like Albert Einstein, who's was a flesh and blood human being, and the fact that Albert Einstein is, say, so much smarter than I am and knows a whole lot more about math and physics and so forth than I am, even though I'm a pretty smart guy and interested in math and physics as well, I'm not really in competition with Albert Einstein. And the more Albert Einsteins there are in the world, I think the better off I'm going to be. And it doesn't matter if those Albert Einsteins are flesh and blood human beings or AI machines that have been generated, if they can come up with the new math and physics that's going to improve our understanding of the world. The same thing, I think, with respect, if I'm an artist and I'm interested in being creative and I want to enjoy great work, there are people like Michelangelo who are, off the charts with respect to creativity and vision and the power in their art. And the more Michelangelos there are in the world, I think the better it is for me, for inspiring me in my artistic and endeavors, and giving me more art to appreciate. So whether the Michelangelos are flesh and blood human beings like Michelangelo historically, or they are algorithms that have been generated that are able to do all of this stuff, that's a resource. It's not going to change anything fundamental with respect to me. I think the same thing, the fact that Usain Bolt is a lot faster or Arnold Schwarzenegger has a lot more muscles and is more powerful. The fact that there are going to be robots that are faster and more powerful, those are resources that we're going to be able to use. Just as I'm not really in competition with Usain Bolt or Arnold Schwarzenegger, the fact that they're faster and more powerful doesn't change anything about what my life is about as a human being and what my aspirations need to be. And I think the same thing holds for robotics and AI integrated with robotics. So I'm coming down much more on the resource side and not so worried about the replacement issues.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.